My fiancée told her friends I was so pathetic she had to be drunk to sleep with me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a tantrum. I simply called off the wedding, took back the car I paid for and walked away. Now I'm thriving while she's falling apart. Before we dive into exactly how I executed this clean break, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Story Sparks. We share stories about self-respect, boundaries, and the quiet power of walking away. Now, let's get into it. My name is David. I am 34 years old and I work as a civil engineer in Manchester. My days are structured and highly predictable. I manage infrastructure projects for the local council, mostly road rehabilitation and complex drainage systems. It is stable, demanding work filled with early mornings, endless spreadsheets, site visits, and very little drama. I bought a modest semi-detached house 3 years ago, and I live a fairly routine life. I am not a loud guy. I don't need to be the center of attention. I value peace, logic, and consistency. My fiancée, well, ex-fiancée now, is Chloe. She is 32. We had been together for 4 years and engaged for 9 months. Chloe works as an estate agent for a regional property firm. Her life is the exact opposite of mine. She spends most of her time doing high-pressure viewings, chasing lucrative listings, and networking with wealthy clients. She is always on. We were living together in my house and had started planning a rather expensive wedding for late summer. The car she drives, an Audi, is registered in my name because I financed it entirely before we got engaged. Her credit wasn't great at the time. That detail matters later. Up until recently, I would have described our relationship as intense but functional. Chloe has a sharp personality. She is quick-witted, highly social, and very comfortable being the loudest, most charismatic person in any room. I am much more reserved. I assumed that our fundamental differences balanced us out. I provided the secure foundation. She provided the social energy. What I did not realize was how she was describing me when she thought I wasn't in the room. 2 months ago, we hosted evening drinks at our place for a few of her friends from the property firm. The weather was unusually warm, so I was in the kitchen cleaning up empty wine glasses and preparing a charcuterie board while they were out in the garden. The back door was wide open. I was not eavesdropping. I wasn't hiding. I was just standing at the sink and I could hear them perfectly clearly. One of her friends, a woman named Megan, asked something about wedding nerves. "Are you getting cold feet at all?" Chloe laughed. It was a specific kind of laugh I had heard before when she was gossiping or being unnecessarily cruel about a coworker. Then she said it. She said she didn't even find me attractive unless she had a few drinks in her system. She said I was so boring and pathetic sometimes that she needed to be tipsy just to sleep with me. They all laughed. A chorus of cackles from women drinking wine I had paid for. There was more. She made a joke about how, at least, I was useful for paying the mortgage, so she could spend her commission on clothes for work. I stopped washing the glass in my hand. I stood perfectly still, looking out the window into the dark. I did not confront her in that moment. I didn't storm outside and make a scene in front of her friends. I finished washing the glasses. I dried my hands. I walked out into the garden with the food tray. I sat down next to her. I acted completely normal, but something shifted permanently in my head that night, like a heavy steel door slamming shut and locking. I did not sleep much that night, not because I was emotional, crying, or heartbroken. I was wide awake because I was thinking through logistics. I own the house. The mortgage is solely in my name. The car she drives is financed and registered entirely under me. The wedding deposits, the venue, the photographer, the caterer, had mostly been paid directly from my personal account. I needed to be absolutely sure that if this went where I suspected it must go, I could act cleanly, swiftly, and legally. The next morning, I decided not to let it sit. She was in the kitchen, wearing one of my oversized hoodies, making coffee like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just humiliated the man she was supposed to marry. I poured myself a cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and asked her directly, Why did you tell your friends you have to be drunk to sleep with me? She froze. The spoon stopped clinking against the mug. She did not deny it. First, she laughed a nervous, breathy laugh. Then she said I was taking it too literally. When I just stared at her, she waved her hand dismissively and said it was just girl talk. When I still did not laugh or soften my expression, her tone shifted from defensive to aggressive. She said if I were more confident, I wouldn't care what she said to her friends. She said maybe if I were less dull and planned more exciting things, she wouldn't need wine to make our evenings interesting. That was not banter. That was layered, deeply rooted contempt. I asked her one more time if she understood why speaking about me that way was unacceptable. She rolled her eyes. She said I was being dramatic, insecure, and that I should focus on the fact she was still here, planning a wedding with me. Still here, that wording settled it. It framed her presence as a charity, as if she was doing me a massive favor by tolerating my existence in exchange for a paid-off mortgage and a free Audi. I set my coffee mug down. I looked her dead in the eye and told her the wedding was off. Not postponed. Off. I said I would not marry someone who publicly disrespects me, views me with contempt, and then dismisses it as a personality flaw on my end when confronted. She actually laughed. She thought I was bluffing. She told me to stop sulking and acting like a child. I did not raise my voice. I told her she needed to pack a bag and call one of her friends. I said she could arrange to collect the rest of her things over the weekend when I was home, but she was not staying in my house another night after speaking about me like that. That is when she finally realized I was serious. And she escalated immediately. She accused me of trying to control her. She said I would regret throwing away 4 years over a stupid joke. I told her calmly that I was not throwing anything away. I was responding to new information. Within 40 minutes, she was crying hysterically and had called her friend Megan to pick her up. I helped carry her suitcase to the car. I did not argue. I did not negotiate. I didn't even look at Megan. When she left, the house felt quiet in a way it had not in years. Not empty, just clear. The first practical step I took after she left was administrative, not emotional. By noon that same day, I had emailed the wedding venue to formally cancel the booking. We were still within the partial refund window, so I recovered about 60% of the heavy deposit. The photographer kept his retainer, as per the contract. That was fine. I consider that lost money a cheap fee for early clarity. It costs a lot more to divorce a narcissist than it does to cancel a wedding. Chloe started messaging me around midday. At first, it was pure disbelief. Then, rapid-fire irritation. She said I was humiliating her by telling the vendors the event was canceled before we had even talked it through. I replied once and kept it incredibly short. I will not move forward with a marriage where I am openly disrespected. I did not debate tone or intent. I did not argue semantics. By late afternoon, her messages shifted again. She said I had massively overreacted and that couples say worse things all the time. She said if I embarrassed her in front of her friends by admitting what she said, she would make sure people knew how insecure and controlling I was. That threat confirmed, without a shadow of a doubt, that I had made the right call. On Saturday, she came to collect the rest of her things. I made sure I was present the entire time, not to intimidate her, but to prevent any later claim that I had withheld her belongings or damaged them. She packed mostly clothes, expensive cosmetics, and a few decorative items she had purchased herself for the living room. I did not contest anything minor. If she wanted the toaster, she could have the toaster. It was not worth the friction. Then we got to the car. The Audi was parked on the drive. She walked toward it with her bags. I handed her the spare key and told her to gather her personal things from inside the cabin and the boot. Then I told her clearly that the car would be staying on the driveway. She stopped dead. She looked at me like I had slapped her. I reminded her that the finance agreement, the insurance policy, and the DVLA registration were entirely under my name. I had allowed her to use it exclusively because we were building a life together. That context no longer applied. She started screaming. She said I couldn't just take it back because she needed a luxury car for her work viewings to look professional to clients. I told her she could arrange her own vehicle the same way she would have if we had never met. She accused me of being petty and vindictive. I told her this was not pettiness. This was a legal asset separation. She ended up having to call a taxi to take her and her bags to Megan's house. As I watched the taxi pull away, leaving the Audi safely on my drive, I felt something profound. For the first time since we got engaged, I felt something close to total relief rather than crushing pressure. The following week was quieter than I expected. I assumed there would be dramatic attempts to reverse the situation, tearful visits, letters slipped under the door. Instead, Chloe focused entirely on optics. She posted vague, inspirational quotes on social media about men being intimidated by strong, independent women. She changed her profile picture to one from a high-end work event where she looked polished and unbothered. Mutual acquaintances started reaching out. Not aggressively, just curious about why the wedding was suddenly off. I kept my explanation consistent, factual, and simple. She told her friends she had to be drunk to sleep with me and that I was pathetic. I ended the engagement. No embellishment, no angry rants, just the exact quote. Interestingly, the reaction from her circle was not what she expected. Two of her friends messaged me privately to say they were shocked she went that far. One admitted Chloe often mocked me when I was not around, but they assumed I knew her harsh sense of humor and didn't mind. That part was incredibly useful. It confirmed a long-standing pattern of disrespect rather than a one-off drunken mistake. Meanwhile, I adjusted quickly. Without her chaotic schedule dictating my evenings, I went back to the gym regularly. I started staying later on site when my engineering projects required it, instead of rushing home in traffic, just to keep her entertained and avoid an argument. I contacted the finance company and refinanced the Audi to reduce the monthly payments, and seriously considered selling it outright since I did not need two vehicles. Chloe, however, began to experience the harsh, practical consequences of her actions. A state agency relies heavily on mobility and image. Within 10 days, she was messaging me about borrowing the Audi temporarily just for client viewings. I declined. I kept it strictly factual. Insurance liability and financial exposure are not risks I am willing to revisit with a non-resident. Her tone changed again, less sharp, more frustrated. She said she was staying in Megan's spare room, but that it was cramped and tense. She said taking Ubers to property viewings was eating massively into her commission. She said I was actively sabotaging her career over a joke. I did not respond to that message. What struck me most was that, even now, she never once apologized without a qualification. There was no statement of understanding the hurt she caused, only negotiation framed around her own inconvenience. That told me everything I needed to know about what a legal marriage to her would have looked like. By the third week, the contact became repetitive. Every few days, Chloe would find a new angle to initiate contact. One day, it was practical. She needed tax documents that were apparently in a specific drawer in my office. I checked. They were not there. Another day, it was emotional. She sent a long text saying 4 years together deserved more than a cold, administrative shutdown. Then, it shifted to strategic. She suggested we attend couples counseling before making any permanent, life-altering decisions. I evaluated each message the exact same way I would review a contract variation at work. What is being requested? What is my exposure? What precedent does this set? What stood out was that absolutely none of her messages addressed the original issue in a direct, accountable way. She never said, "I was wrong to speak about you that way." Instead, she said, "You misinterpreted it." She said, "You are being too sensitive." She said, "You escalated a minor issue." It became painfully clear that continued access to me was simply a negotiation tool for her to regain her comfort. One evening, she called 6 times in a row. I did not answer. Then she sent a frantic voice note accusing me of punishing her. She said I was sitting in my big house enjoying watching her struggle without the car and without her lifestyle. That was pure projection. I replied once via text. I wrote, "This is not a punishment. This is a natural consequence. I wish you well, but I am not reconsidering my decision." She responded within 30 seconds with a massive paragraph about how no other woman would ever tolerate my insecurity and dullness. It was the exact same tone she used in the garden. That was the moment I decided clarity required absolute distance. I blocked her number. I blocked her on all social media. I emailed her once to state that any remaining communication regarding shared administrative matters, like redirecting her mail, could go through email only and would be ignored if it wasn't essential. Then I archived the thread. The quiet that followed was fundamentally different from the first week. It was cleaner. There was no subconscious anticipation of the next manipulative attempt, no waiting for the phone screen to light up with a new accusation. For the first time since calling off the wedding, I felt fully removed from the situation, rather than just managing it. The month after I blocked her ended up being unexpectedly, wildly productive. At work, I had been leading a massive drainage redesign project for the city that had stalled for almost a year due to budgeting disputes and contractor delays. With zero emotional distractions in my personal life, I pushed much harder on it. I stayed late reviewing cost breakdowns. I met directly with the procurement team. I boldly restructured part of the proposal to reduce long-term maintenance expenses for the council. It was approved. That approval put me directly in front of senior management in a way I had not been before. Within 6 weeks of the breakup, I was offered a promotion to senior project lead, complete with a noticeable salary increase and a performance bonus tied to delivery milestones. For the first time in a long while, I felt genuine forward momentum. Word of that promotion traveled faster than I expected. Manchester is not an enormous city socially, especially in overlapping professional and property circles. Chloe heard about it. The first email from her after the block was entirely different in tone. No sarcasm, no eye-rolling subtext. She said she had made a massive mistake. She said she was under immense pressure at work when she made those comments, and that it was stupid, immature, and thoughtless. She swore she did not mean them the way they sounded. I did not respond. 2 days later, there was another message. Much longer. She said she missed me terribly. She said she had been angry and lashing out because she felt insecure about earning unstable commission while I had a rock-solid, high-earning income. She admitted, finally, that she sometimes put me down in front of her friends to feel superior and maintain her image. That was the closest thing to brutal honesty I had ever heard from her. Then came the inevitable request. She asked if we could meet and talk in person. She said she would apologize properly. She said she would give up drinking entirely if that was what it took. She said she would do anything to fix it. The shift was stark. From dismissing me as sensitive and dull, to offering massive life concessions just to get me to a coffee shop. I read the email carefully. Then I closed it. My professional success did not change what she had revealed about how she fundamentally viewed me. It only changed her financial incentives. She wasn't attracted to me. She was attracted to the stability and the upgraded lifestyle my promotion represented. I did not agree to meet her. Instead, I replied once by email to close the loop permanently. I wrote, "I appreciate the apology, but I am not interested in resuming the relationship in any capacity." I kept it neutral. No insults, no moral lectures, just finality. She responded within an hour. This time, the mask slipped and there was no performance. She said she had panicked when I blocked her. She said she always assumed I would cool off and come back. She admitted she told her friends I would never actually leave, because I was too stable and predictable to disrupt my own life. That detail mattered far more than the original insult in the garden. She had not just disrespected me. She had coldly calculated that I would tolerate the abuse indefinitely because I hated change. Over the next week, The emails became increasingly urgent and pathetic. She said her short-term rental was too expensive. She said the property market had slowed down, and losing the Audi had made her look less successful, causing her to lose high-end listings. She said she was exhausted trying to rebuild everything at once on her own. Then, she asked directly if she could move back into the spare room temporarily while we work things out. That was the first request that felt entirely divorced from romance and entirely focused on survival and security. She wanted her free housing back. I replied once more. I said no. I said moving back in would blur boundaries and create false expectations. I reiterated that the decision to end the engagement was final and not a negotiation tactic. She tried a different, desperate approach. She said she would sign a formal tenancy agreement and pay market rent. She said she would prove she respected me as a landlord if not a partner. That confirmed my earlier conclusion. The urgency was strictly situational, not relational. I stopped replying entirely after that. Through mutual contacts, I later heard she had started telling people she had sabotaged the best thing in her life, that she drastically underestimated me, that she assumed I would never call her bluff and it ruined her. For my part, I was not angry anymore. I was just incredibly steady. The promotion went through officially at the end of the quarter. I celebrated quietly with a couple of engineering colleagues at a pub. No dramatic reinvention, just solid, forward movement. About 2 months after the breakup, I ran into her unexpectedly. It was a rainy Thursday evening and I had just left the gym. I stopped at a small supermarket near Deansgate to grab some groceries for dinner. She was in the wine aisle. The irony did not escape me. She saw me before I saw her. When I turned the corner with my basket, she was already looking directly at me. Not defiant, not sharp, just incredibly tired. We stood there for a second in that awkward public silence people pretend does not exist. She approached me first. No theatrics, no raised voice. She said she had been hoping to run into me because I was not answering emails anymore. That was intentional, I said calmly. She looked thinner. Not dramatically, just worn down by stress. She told me work had dipped severely, and she was considering moving back in with her parents outside the city to cut costs. She looked at her shoes and said she had massively underestimated how much stability I provided her. There it was again. Stability, provision, infrastructure, not affection, not partnership, not love. She said she had been stupid. She said she got so used to being admired socially that she started seeing me as safe, rather than valuable. She admitted, looking me in the eye, that she liked the reaction she got from belittling me in front of her friends because it made her feel powerful and superior. I let her finish her confession. Then I told her calmly that I believed her apology was genuine this time. I also told her it did not change my decision one bit. Respect is not something I negotiate for after it is withdrawn publicly, I said. Once I know someone sees me as beneath them, I cannot unhear it, and I cannot unknow it. She asked, her voice cracking, if there was any scenario, maybe in a year, where we could start again slowly. I said no. I did not say it with anger or malice. I said it like stating a mathematical fact. She nodded. For the first time since all of this started, she did not argue. She did not try to reframe the narrative. She just said she wished she had understood consequences earlier. We parted ways in the cereal aisle. I went home, cooked a great dinner, and felt something settle in my chest for good. Not vindication, just completion. After that supermarket encounter, I expected some kind of emotional aftershock, a wave of sadness or nostalgia. There was none. What I noticed instead was how entirely differently I carried myself in the weeks that followed. Not in a dramatic movie montage sense, more in small, highly measurable ways. I started saying no to things I did not want to attend without offering a long excuse. I stopped over-explaining my engineering decisions at work. I delegated more decisively on site. It was as if drawing a firm, immovable line in my personal life had recalibrated my tolerance for nonsense everywhere else. The project I had pushed through earlier moved into its execution phase smoothly. I was managing contractors, timelines, and massive budget reviews without the background noise of someone questioning my competence or masculinity at home. The bonus structure kicked in once the initial milestones were met. Financially, I was miles ahead of where I had projected I would be this year, largely because I wasn't bleeding money into a wedding or a partner's luxury lifestyle. Meanwhile, updates about Chloe filtered in indirectly through the grapevine. She did end up moving back in with her parents outside Manchester. The long commute to the city cut severely into her networking time. Her commission dipped even further. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she had tried to reframe the breakup publicly as a mutual decision regarding differing life goals at first, but people had already heard the fuller version. Apparently, her exact quote about needing to be drunk had circulated widely among her own friends. Reputation shifts quietly but decisively. Once enough people understand the pattern of who you really are, you do not need to defend yourself. The truth does the heavy lifting. About 3 months post-breakup, she sent one final email. It was short. No bargaining, no requests for housing. She said she had started therapy because she realized she equated dominance with security. She said she had treated me like a resource instead of a human being. She did not ask for anything. I did not respond, but I respected that message more than any previous one. I am not interested in revenge arcs. I take no joy in watching someone's life collapse. What happened to her was not something I maliciously orchestrated. It was simply the removal of a safety net she assumed would never, ever move. And once that net was gone, gravity handled the rest. It has been just over 6 months since I called off the wedding. The house feels like mine again in a way it never did when she was here. Not because it is quieter, but because there is absolutely no underlying tension. I rearranged the spare room into a proper, high-end home office instead of the half-storage compromise she demanded it be. I officially sold the Audi and replaced it with something highly practical and reliable. The extra cash from the equity went straight into my investment portfolio. Professionally, the promotion has settled into a comfortable routine. The initial surge of responsibility is now just my normal workload. I manage a team of 5 engineers. I am strict about timelines and crystal clear about expectations. No one seems confused about where they stand with me. Personally, I have started dating casually but with extreme intentionality. I am transparent early on about what I will not tolerate. Public disrespect is an immediate, non-negotiable deal-breaker. Jokes that rely on diminishing a partner are not clever or funny to me anymore. They are diagnostic. I do not think Chloe is an inherently evil villain. She is intelligent, driven, and capable. But she severely confused stability with weakness, and she confused my quiet admiration for leverage. She believed that because I was measured, calm, and consistent, I would absorb absolutely any abuse to preserve the structure of my life. She was wrong. Calling off the wedding was not an emotional outburst. It was a structural correction. A legal marriage would have financially and legally intertwined me with someone who saw me as a safety net first, a punching bag second, and a partner never. That is not a foundation I am willing to build on. The most telling part of this entire saga is this. The moment she realized I was serious was not when I confronted her in the kitchen. It was when I acted. When the venue was officially canceled. When the car stayed on the driveway. When the digital block was permanent. Clarity is quiet. It does not need theatrics or screaming matches. If anyone listening to this is currently questioning whether a cruel comment from a partner was just a joke, ask yourself one simple thing. Would they have said it if they genuinely believed you might pack your bags and walk away immediately? If the answer is no, then they don't respect you. They are just managing you, and you already know what you are dealing with. I did not lose a fiancé. I removed myself from a future that would have required me to accept being small in my own life. And that is the biggest win of all. If you found value in this story, Hit the like button and share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own worth. Leave a comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who mistook your kindness for weakness? Subscribe to Story Sparks for more stories about building boundaries and taking your life back. Until next time, stay strong.